Hey there, Helena here. So today I want to chat with you about a couple of things. I want to chat with you about why women are actually 3 times more at risk for horse-related injuries. Very fascinating. Oops, I don't know what that is in my hair. Rolling around in the hay. Okay. A fascinating statistic I came across recently and my thoughts on why that is. And I also want to reveal to you my 5-step trust builder methodology or process for kind of either building or rebuilding trust with your horse, whether it's kind of a new horse or relationship in the first case and or rebuilding it after some sort of unsettling event, trauma, spill, spook, whatever the case may be. And interestingly, I want to share that I recently sent out a little bit of a survey poll to my audience on my email list, who is largely my horse-loving women. And it was fascinating what came back in one of the responses that really kind of stopped me in my tracks, but I do believe is actually more common than perhaps we might think. And that was this woman talking about how she had had multiple falls and scares with her horses and, kind of didn't have the right fit. And even now she's at the point where even with horses that she calls wonderful, she still doesn't really have the confidence or the courage around riding them and getting back in the saddle. And so that really touched me because I get it and I can relate. And I actually recently shared in both an email and then in a previous podcast a while back, I'm trying to remember which one, around how with my very first horse, what he taught me around, building that trust and connection, because we had had some spooks and spills and bucks and things like that, and the traditional approaches around training and herbs and saddle fit. And of course I checked all the things out as a former renegade holistic equine veterinarian, in case you're new to me, for over 2 decades. And so I ruled all those things out, right? I had an animal communicator out, I did all the things. And at the end of the day, I ended up just getting this hint, this intuitive nudge to actually just stop my lessons. I was working with a natural horsemanship coach, and it just really didn't feel like it was getting me where I wanted to be with Skipper. Again, my beloved first horse, first love, Arabian gelding, chestnut. And I just decided that I would release the pressure for both of us. Looking back, I think we both had performance anxiety, and just hang out, just spend time with him, just not have any agenda. And when I did that, I committed to doing that for a minimum of 30 days just to see what happened as an experiment. And when I did that, within weeks, and all I did was either hang out with him, I maybe groom and love on him. Other days I might play kind of hide and seek with him and hide in the bushes and kind of just run around and, let my inner child come out and just play with him. And it did wonders for both of us, really soothing and calming and relaxing both of our nervous system and sort of rebuilding the trust and the connection and the partnership. And I had him at this point for quite some time. I think maybe it was over a year or so that I'd been working with a trainer and exploring all these things and having, that rocky ride and experience with him where the fear and the anxiety was actually building. for me in terms of riding him. And my biggest fear was to actually head out the gate of my property, which was small at the time, but in the back, I had had dreams of actually riding him in the fields and, just hanging out there and, having magical horse time. Anyway, I wasn't planning to share this story with you, but the not moral of the story, but what happened at the end of the story, not to leave you hanging, is that I ended up within a few weeks before the 30-day period was up, without planning it. It happened totally organically, spontaneously, riding out the gate with him bareback, bitless, loping through those fields in the back, and just having those magical kind of ride as one moments where I felt so connected with him. And those moments will forever stay etched in my heart. But I get the frustration. The whole reason I'm sharing this story is I get the frustration of jonesing to get back in the saddle, wanting to ride, and having perhaps some fear and reservation, and your body saying no. Your body kind of really having some resistance. And while I do believe that some riders and horsemen or women can, and I don't want to use the word override, but can navigate that and still have successful rides and feel the fear and do it anyway, something that I've really been wanting to shed light on lately around the sacred horsewoman, that deep feeler, sensitive, equine empath that I am calling the renegade horsewoman, because she feels so deeply. That approach really doesn't work for us, because we can actually feed off of the energy of our horse, and if we don't have the tools and the skill set and the awareness to regulate our nervous system and do all the things, that approach can backfire on us. And I think one of my past videos, which I'll try to remember to link down below, I talk about why I think that is a terrible idea or advice for us to, get right back on the horse after a fall. Again, as a, sensitive or spiritual renegade horsewoman. Okay, so I know I took you on the scenic route here, but to come back to the statistics that I mentioned and why I believe that they are so, and I meant what I said earlier was I came across the statistic that women, and it just blew me away. I was kind of researching like horse-related accident and injury statistics. And in the US, I think it was something like 65,000 horse-related injuries are reported a year, which is huge, and blew me away. And then when I was reading further, the part that really caught my eye, got my attention, was that it said that women, in terms of gender, were 3 times more likely to sustain a riding accident or injury. And I started to wonder why, because at first I was taken aback. I was like, women and horses have such a special bond, and I was surprised initially to read that statistic. And I got to reflecting on it, and what came through to me was this whole piece around us being, again, more empathic, more sensitive. And I don't know if you've heard of the saying, which I recently heard from one of my mentors, that men are like waffles and women are like spaghetti. And essentially what that means, as I understand it, is that men can, if you think about a waffle, it has all those squares, right? Men are so much better at, or let's not make a judgment. Men naturally, the way that they're wired, they actually compartmentalize, work and play and, home and their emotions and all the things, right? There's this compartmentalization that they just do naturally, the way that they are wired. Whereas women are more like spaghetti. We weave and mix everything together, right? Our home, our emotions, our, kids, the family, the horses, our career, all the things, right? Get woven together like cue the spaghetti. Okay. And so when I got to thinking about that, while I am often talking about that highly sensitive, horsewoman and empath, in general, if we were to compare, say, like men to women, again, without, I'm not trying to be sexist here, but there is, I think we're just wired differently, right? Why we need community and, communication and connection and all the things in such a different way than men. And so it made total sense to me that the potential for horse-related injuries in women was higher 3 times because we feel that much more deeply. We are not naturally wired to do that compartmentalization thing, which kind of blurs the boundaries, right? It can make it fuzzy if we are sensitive and we feel our horse, getting anxious or spook, right? We begin kind of absorbing and feeling that energy in a way that now might create us to feel that fear and anxiety. And so then there's this feedback loop and, things get escalated, and that's where we can get into trouble. And so that's my belief around why the statistic is so. Take it or leave it, take what resonates, leave the rest. That's not something I researched. It was just my intuitive hit. And so I wanted to share that with you today. And then, from that place, really talk about how we can start rebuilding that trust after trauma, and or again, if you want to, from the beginning, say with a new horse, start building that bond or, relationship and that trust in a different way that allows you to really be connected with yourself and your body and your intuition and all the things. And by the way, I also just dropped yesterday, and I'll try to remember to link it down below, a podcast on rebuilding trust after trauma. And I'll be honest with you, it was so good. I actually almost didn't publish it because I thought it should be like a paid training. But in there, I talk about the Trust Trifecta and the foundation of the field, the trust field, if you will, and the trust codes that I think are essential for building that foundation of trust. And if you want to check that out, that will be down below. But on a different but similar note, they're kind of connected, but a little bit different. Today I want to talk about the methodology, the kind of 5-step process that I have built, looking back on how I have gone from with specifically last year with my beloved Indigo, who I've shared a few stories about with him, went through a patch, a season, a cycle where we were having a lot of fear, a lot of spooks, a lot of navigating some really scary behavior and dynamics. And what I did to start rebuilding that, looking back, I kind of reflected and organized this in a way that it's teachable in terms of the steps that I took to rebuild our relationship and our trust to where now we are even stronger and better and more connected than before that happened. And of course, in full transparency, always a work in progress, right? I get to be human, he gets to be a horse, right? And our relationship gets to evolve over time. So let's go ahead and talk about this trust building methodology. So the first step is the Trust Trifecta, like activating those trust codes. And that's actually what I talk about in that podcast I just mentioned. So I'm not going to take the time to go through them here. Again, you definitely want to tune in if this topic is of interest to you, and bring your pen and paper. Okay, so then the second step is learning how to regulate your nervous system. If you don't have any awareness or tools or skill set around that, it's so important to learn to see where you are now, to see what happens, to notice where you are now. Are you hanging out in survival mode, like, more than half of the time? And then when you go to be with your horse, what are you in survival mode? Are you in that flight, rushing around energy? Are you connected and grounded and present? Okay, so just really noticing that for yourself, how much time you're spending, again, in life in general, and then when you go to your horse, noticing if you're bringing that with you, noticing if maybe a past event actually is triggering some bracing or fear. Noticing that's going to be the first step. And then with that awareness, now we get to make the choice with our free will to learn how to soothe and relax and regulate our nervous system. And there's a number of ways how. I'm not going to go into that here. That's part of my actually, if you're interested in going deeper, part of my brand new 3-week experience called The Field, where we are going to go deep in activating your trust codes and creating the foundation field for trust for you and your horse with Source. Okay, so that will be down below as well. The next piece that is so important to do is the unraveling of somatic knots of stored stress, tension, and trauma from your body, whether it's from that event or maybe even an unrelated traumatic event. Or again, if you've been in chronic stress or survival mode, your body's holding that tension. And if you don't have a way to release that tension and practice spiritual hygiene or somatic hygiene beyond taking a bath, right? That's going to be so important for not only your own health and well-being, so that you just feel better and you feel more grounded and you feel connected and you feel present, right? But now, again, you as the guardian, you're bringing that to your horse, your loved ones, and beyond. Okay, so that's going to be the third step. The fourth step is really what I like to call somatic safety. Cultivating somatic safety. And this takes things deeper than the regulation of your nervous system. Okay, that's a first step. That's like really teaching and getting your body to relax and let go of, flip the switch from that survival mode to that, rest and digest, relax and repair, and receive mode, right? And so they're connected, but there's a little bit slightly different intention. So, or, similar, let's call it similar. So that's the second step I mentioned. When I'm talking about cultivating somatic safety, that's really learning the embodiment. That's really learning how to fully land in your body. That's learning how to be grounded and centered and present and not coming from your head, right? Connecting with your body's wisdom and allowing yourself to fully settle into your sacred seat, as I often like to say. And it's funny, just as a side note, I've done trainings in the past where I talked about, quote unquote, the real reason that I think women love horses beyond all the other medicine and magic they bring us is this piece of when we actually are blessed enough to be carried on their back, to get on their back, right? And we settle into our seat. This is such a grounding and supportive and stabilizing experience, or can be, depending on, again, on the horse and the situation and your level of awareness and, somatic awareness and all the things. But in its essence, the intention of it for me, energetically, when the relationship is there, when the trust is there, when the bond is there, is literally helping to anchor you at the root, right? And we know our root chakra is all about safety, stability, and security. So that's a little side note and the foundation for a lot of the work that I do with women who are wanting to, again, repair the rupture that might have happened with their horse, and or again, it can be other things that you're still carrying the trauma and your horse wants you to actually, kind of look at that and metabolize it. And so, maybe nothing happened with your horse, but maybe they're acting in a way that is trying to get your attention, because horses are, as I like to say, to borrow Carolyn Resnick's words, the gatekeepers of our higher self. And so they're always guiding us back home. So the last and final step of my trust building methodology is to really start taking aligned action. And this is going to be different for every situation, for every, unique human and horse relationship, where depending on where you're at and what your goals are, it's going to be different. Maybe it looks like, as I shared in my story with Skipper, maybe it looks like, just pausing everything and taking the time to kind of just connect and hang out and commune, right? Or maybe it looks like, doing groundwork. And, I'm a big fan of the groundwork before getting on the back, in terms of, basic foundational, whether you want to call it horsemanship skills or training. But, again, take what resonates, leave the rest. But learning, maybe it's that, maybe you have a goal of hitting the trails, and maybe it's like you approach and retreat, like Pirelli's approach, right? For both the horse and yourself, where maybe you're taking a few more steps closer to that each day. Maybe you are practicing in your mind, visualizing the experience and the outcome that you want with your horse. This is another really powerful way of planting those seeds in the field, which we're going to be doing inside of that container. Which I'm so excited about. So anyway, quick recap, okay? And my acronym here is TRUST. So to begin building trust, either again with a new horse and or rebuilding trust with a horse that maybe you've had some kind of unsettling or scary event with, or traumatic event. And we're going to save this conversation for another day, but the definition of trauma, because I think that one can be a whole eye-opener around how people associate that word differently or give it different meaning. But anyway, the recap is: 1, activate your trust codes, that trust trifecta that I mentioned before. 2, learn how to regulate your nervous system and relax it and help it feel calm. 3, unravel the somatic knots, the stored stress, tension, and trauma from your body. This is, again, part of the sacred somatic work and embodiment work that I do and teach and will be sharing inside of the field and beyond. 4, learn how to cultivate that somatic safety for yourself before, during, and after when you're with your horse, okay? Such an important skill for just life, especially with the way the world is these days. And finally, 5, actual implementation, taking the aligned action, which may look like baby steps, but leaning into your leadership edge on a consistent basis so that you are growing and expanding, but in a way that your nervous system feels safe, okay? That is why we want to cultivate the somatic safety along the way. Doesn't mean you won't ever feel fear, but when you do, when it comes up, when the bracing happens, do you know what to do with your breath, with your nervous system, with your posture, with all the things to help you respond versus react in a more empowering way in your embodied leadership, okay? So I truly hope that you found value in today's video. If you did, please leave me a like down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. And again, everything that I mentioned will be down below for you in the box. And yeah, I think that's all I have. Until next time, ciao for now. Namaste.